what are we talking about?
First of all, I am sick and tired of every single new Unreal Engine 5 game. I'm tired of it. I just want it to be done. You want to know why I'm so mad? Because every one of them has to be photorealistic, realer-than-life pieces of garbage. I think they're all bad. They're awful, every last one of them. And not just the Unreal Engine ones, just all the games that feature photorealistic graphics. They're terrible. You want to know why? Here's my issue with them. 10 years from now, you're going to need a remake. I mean, look at it. Like a few years ago, 2017, Horizon Zero Dawn dropped. Pretty good looking game. Guess what? We got a remake of that. 2013, 14, Last of Us Part 1 dropped. And it even got a remake. Guess what? It got another remake. I'm tired. I'm done.
We are missing out on good games.
Get me out of
with
here,
all
man.
these remakes.
I'm done.
This is factual.
What's the alternative?
Oh, the alternative. I got you. Have you ever heard of this little game called it's a little indie title. I think it's called like The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Tears of the Kingdom. It had a little like indie title sequel as well. Mm-hmm. Guess what? That features something called cell shaded graphics. Heard of Borderlands?
Yeah.
Cell shaded graphics. Guess what? Both those games still look pretty good.
They look great, actually.
They look great.
It's pretty good. Pretty solid stuff.
Now, my proposition is that every game should be stylized. Every single one.
Not
way,
every game.
Every game. That way, you never have the issue of them looking bad ever. Because, look, for example, The Wind Waker. It looks good. OG Wind Waker looks great. But they still made an HD remake. They didn't have to, but they did it anyways. Point is, if every game looks stylized, you never have that issue. Or if you have a blend of both, where, I guess, for instance, take Kena Bridge of Spirits. It's a game that's heavily inspired by, I would say, the Pixar look. It features, the latest and greatest in graphics and, I would say, fidelity and rendering and all that. But it has a very Pixar look to it. It looks very animated. It looks very whimsical. But it still looks good. Ratchet and Clank still looks great. Also approaches that, that latest and greatest in fidelity, but it has a very good and distinct art style.
Right. I don't think any Ratchet and Clank technically looks bad.
Nah, it's just like, if anything, like the art style just like improves,
Just getting a little tighter.
It's a little tighter,
Right.
Polygons are a thing, other than that.
Okay, but jokes aside, my hate for photorealism aside, I think it doesn't really matter.
I don't think he was joking.
No, I was joking because I love Yakuza. It's photorealistic.
Right. I mean, technically, yeah.
Yeah. So it's photorealistic, but it does have a blend of stylization to it.
Right.
And what I'm trying to get at is that I don't think the issue is photorealism. I don't think the issue is stylization. I think the issue is the art direction. Mm-hmm. Art direction is always king. For crying out loud, last year, I think it was last year, Alan Wake 2 won like the best award for art direction. Why? And it's a photorealistic game. Keep that in mind. It looks really good. Yes, graphically, it looks very good. But the reason why I won that is because of the direction. It's very surreal. That a blend. I think at one point they had like some kind of music video scene where the visuals changed entirely. The way it approaches its storytelling is with its art direction. Yeah. And I think that's most important. I know a lot of indie games that end up like employing that aspect to their advantage. For example, Cuphead. It employs that
Cuphead was excellent.
Excellent, right? It employs that 1930s, like, that rubber, nose, animation style. It looks great. It looks awesome. There's a few titles out there that have been inspired by this little tiny studio. I think it's called, Studio Ghibli or whatever. They make anime movies or whatever, right? Very small studio, right?
I think I've heard of them.
Yeah, you may have heard of them somewhere. So these guys, they end up inspiring so many indie titles we can think of. Off the top of my head, have you heard of Ori and the Blind Forest?
Ori is amazing. Hand drawn.
That's
crazy.
Guess who inspired them?
Was it Studio Ghibli?
Studio Ghibli.
And I've heard that they were kind of inspired by, well, not they, but there are some hand drawn games that were inspired by that. But to see that one specifically, which I played the sequel, I didn't play the
You played Will of the Wisp.
Will of the Wisp, yes, Will of the Wisp, and so now it's kind of hard to go back because I think there's new features in Will of the Wisp, but it's not in Blind Forest.
Yeah, I would say so.
So
the point is, it's arguably one of the best looking indie game titles out there, and it still looks good to this day.
Right, and I wonder, and I don't want to interrupt because I feel like you're on a tear right now.
Right,
but the idea of if you do remake it or update it, are we just not making it perform better on modern consoles?
In a way, okay, I will
More
give them,
frames.
I will give them that. If you do decide to implement, I would say, these upgrades or these remakes or whatever, you always have the option of being able to utilize the stronger technology to allow more advanced visual fidelity as well as higher frame rates and such. I will give them that. However, I think by having an art style that typically relies more heavily on stylization, you're not stressing your systems as heavily. I mean, for crying out loud, look at Nintendo. 80% of their titles are stylized, completely stylized. They're not just trying to be hyper realistic. They're not trying to be.
And can they? That's the question.
Yes, they can. They are very capable of doing it, and they have shown it. Case in point, the guys, I think it's Monolith Software, the ones who are responsible for the Xenoblade games.
Okay.
They're the closest when it comes to games that are more photorealistic, but they're still very stylized.
Yeah, I guess Final Fantasy has generally been thought of being
I would say Final Fantasy is like is a
it's
fusion.
technically photorealistic,
Yeah.
but the art style for some of the things,
Yeah, the art
more
direction is very like anime-esque, I would say.
right, but still photorealistic anime.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I would say that it only kind of like applies to the recent titles.
True, yeah.
And not like the old school titles. Because
Some of the old 2D titles, even.
Exactly, the 2D titles. Even Final Fantasy VII on PlayStation, right?
The original.
The original.
Yeah.
Right? Like it still has that like, you know, stylized, kind of walking around, you're kind of more blocky in a sense.
Yeah.
The only parts that aren't are like when you're in the combat, and even still then it's very stylized. Like it doesn't look that photorealistic.
Yeah. Now, no, go ahead.
Oh yeah. So what I'm trying to get at is that even though I do think it's important to have that stylization simply for the purpose of one, it will run on your potato PC. Two, it will run on your potato console. The Switch, sorry. Three,
Yeah.
it will be timeless in terms of like its art direction. But that being said, there are still some games that, despite them being stylized, they still look like doo-doo. They still look bad. They look like you know, you try to rub butter on your bulldog and you said, hey, this is art. No, it's not. You're not fooling nobody,
Try
right?
to rub butter on a bulldog. Golly.
But in the same vein, I still think that despite, you know, trying to make everything look hyper realistic, everything look like as realer than life, so to speak. Like, for example, Horizon Forbidden West. Now, it is technically a fusion style game, meaning that it features stylizations in the form of its vibrant colors, as well as like, you know, the machinery and stuff. But at the same time, it does try to achieve those hyper realistic visuals that try to achieve that, you know, photorealism. But it puts so much emphasis on that I think, give it 10 to 20 years from now, it's probably going to look a little bit strange. Now, it might look good still. Like, for example, take Batman, I think it's Arkham Knight. To this day, it still looks good. Even though it is technically a photorealistic game, the reason why it still looks good is because of the direction, the art direction.
Yes.
Right. It does have a strong art direction. You can tell by some of the character models, like some of the bad guys, they don't look real life accurate, but
Right.
they are like photo-esque, realistic looking.
They're stylized.
How do you like? There's a
Like,
stylization to them.
There's that gritty, like I'm a thug in Gotham, and you
Right.
look at you look
Right.
at them, and you're like, this is what I imagine when I see a thug in Gotham.
Right. Now, would you say that that's more of like a hybrid blend game? Because, you know, obviously, if you look at like the environments around you, ultra photorealistic. Batman looks photorealistic. Some
Right.
of the characters and villains look a little bit more.
Right. I would say I think it's better to have that type of approach where you're blending the two mediums together. I think one of the best examples has got to be Ghost of Tsushima.
I swear you're going to say Pikmin.
I was going to say Pikmin at one point.
Okay.
Because that's hilarious. And also, it's low-key kind of true. Because you're featuring just hyperly, like, stylized characters and these, like, creatures within a world that, at this point, we all know it's planet Earth. It's planet Earth. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You look around this world and...
I mean, I'm reading English.
Yeah, you're reading English.
On the soda wrapper. You know.
On the soda wrapper. You're like this little tiny dude who's running around with these tiny little ants, and you're, you know, trying to collect stuff for your spaceship. But the more you realize, like, around this world, everything is so big, but in reality, you're just really tiny, you know?
Right. It's a fantastic game of perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
And overcoming the world around you. There's so much like story in that game that doesn't actually have to be told. You know?
Right.
Yeah, facts.
Exactly. I just think it's honestly, as much as I do really enjoy stylization, I think it matters more so how you handle the direction. Because sometimes you can have a really stylized game, but it just doesn't bode well with the players. Like, for example, I know a lot of people are not a fan of a lot of people are fans of the Hoyoverse games, like, Zenless Zone Zero, Wuthering Waves, Genshin Impact.
Okay, yeah.
But in the same vein, a lot of people aren't because it has that more anime-esque looking style to it.
Right. Well, if you love anime, you will probably at least give that game a chance, like say
Right,
Genshin
right.
Impact, right?
Right, exactly. But in the same vein, it might be a turnoff for some people just because they can't get behind the stylized direction that they have
Right.
going on. But
Yeah.
maybe they may not like that type of stylization. Maybe they may be more privy to, I don't know how like Persona 5 is handled or Persona
Right.
3 Reload.
I'm gonna be honest. Whenever I'm like playing something or watching something, and I get an ad for like some mobile game that has like an anime-esque, not a manic pixie girl, but that's something else. And she's like, "Ha!" and I'm just like, "Nah,
No,
I'm
right?
good.
It's kind of a turnoff for some
don't
people.
want
I'm
it.
I'm
Yeah, I don't want
good.
it.
I'm good. This is gonna get weird in 5 minutes. Like I'm
Right.
good."
But in the same vein, you also have those mobile games that feature like these super realer than life buxom women who are talking about, oh, get into war today. And then you hop in and it's nothing, anything like
It's a base
that.
builder?
It's a base builder,
It's
right?
a base builder
Right.
or it's a match 'em 3 game.
Match 'em 3 rating, right. So
Can we just mobile games? Oh my gosh, nothing pisses me off more than when I see a mobile game being played and they don't know how to play the game.
Yes.
And it's obvious.
It's an ad.
obvious.
And
They're
I
trying to
it.
get you to
They're
play.
trying to get you to play.
Right.
But it makes
I could do
me-
better than that.
It's like I don't want to play this game. I feel like if you buy this game, you're brain dead.
that being said, I do think it's really interesting, at least seeing the hand-drawn games, because you can clearly see they had to be inspired by some kind of artist out there. Off the top of my head, there's a game that's called Grease, and Gris. It's a very small indie game, and later on it had a sequel title named Neva that came out this year. The sequel title is actually inspired by the film Princess Mononoke, if you know anything about that. It's a little indie film, whatever. So Grease itself is inspired by this artist named Jean Giraud, and I believe he has like this sort of like distinct like surreal looking art, like maybe almost akin to Van Gogh, for example,
Yeah.
but not quite. And that was like largely the direction that they chose to approach for this type of game to kind of give its unique look. If you
Yeah.
want something like for example, Hades, another game that's inspired by not I would say Studio Ghibli, but instead it was inspired by a comic book artist. Off the top of my head, I'm trying to think. I think his name is like Mike Mignola. He's the one who made Hellboy. And
Yeah.
if you know anything about Hellboy, or at least the comics, is that there's an emphasis on shadows. There's an
Yeah.
emphasis on, the ink art. There's an emphasis on that stylization. And Hades just exudes all of that. Every single character, like pretty much the art direction in total, it's very much putting emphasis on those shadows, on like the line art.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, one game that I thought of when you say when you were talking earlier, I was like, ooh, so like Kingdom Hearts,
Kingdom Hearts is
which is a weird game.
I would say Kingdom Hearts is like very much so in the fusion kind of category where
Right.
it blends both photorealism with that stylization.
But it's not like a true photorealism.
But it's
not
not
for
either.
most things. I mean, especially the newest one. It
The
blended
newest-
all sorts of stuff.
Yeah. The newest one I would say probably it just employs a lot of modern graphical fidelity, if that makes any sense.
I know there's like a Toy Story mission. So
Isn't there a Mario game that kind of has that fusion? Odyssey.
Super Mario
Odyssey
Odyssey
does
did
have-
have,
Odyssey has that.
Odyssey does have that.
some shifting styles.
Mm-hmm.
And it had, I guess, some more photorealistic environments and worlds. And I mean,
Yeah,
there's
New Dog City was the biggest
A
example.
lot of the characters, I mean, the environment was more photorealistic. The characters were clearly
stylized.
stylized. And oddly enough, you can play I think the lady from New Dunk City. You can play her in Mario Party, which I'm not a fan of. I don't
Paulina,
care.
whatever
Yeah. I'm like, why is she here?
You're not a fan of her? Like she was there with the original Jumpman.
Oh, was she really?
Yeah,
that's-
she was.
that's her.
Yeah,
The one that you got to rescue from Donkey
yeah.
Kong's
It was before
ancestor.
Peach. Stole her. Whole,
Look at me not knowing my gaming history.
You're the
it's all
Mario
good.
guy.
You're the Mario guy. Oh no,
I'm the Mario guy. No, next episode I'm gonna introduce. This is my Mario guy.
Oh my gosh, you're the guy who does everything at this point.
Right, he's
But-
the guy. But you're on a tear.
Yeah,
so keep going.
My biggest issue with a lot of these, I would say, photorealistic games, because I was on the tirade earlier about Unreal Engine 5 and how everybody and their mother wants a photorealistic game. Like, come on, man. I'm tired.
Can Unreal do not photorealistic?
It can. It has done it plenty of times before, but people just don't want to do it. I guess, okay. Final Fantasy 16 technically is photorealistic, but it's more stylized. Like it's a blend of both, I would say. I think I mentioned, I'm pretty sure Kana was a game that actually employed that stylization. The point is, it's present, it is there. It's just, it's up to the developers if they want to pursue that direction. And to me personally, I'm just not a big fan of having to constantly make everything, or at least the big mainstream games, as hyper-realistic as possible, like in order to push graphical fidelity.
Well, do you think maybe a lot of these games that are coming out that are more just photorealistic and like, wow, these graphics are good, are made because they want to be able to, sell systems and say, oh, the graphics are good, kind of like when they updated Horizon
honestly,
for PS5 Pro.
I would say so. I mean, okay, maybe I'm just sounding like a big hater, but let me just bring it back in. For example, Death Stranding. Photorealistic game.
So photorealistic.
Tons
the
of
second one,
stylization.
even more.
Even more. Tons of stylization.
There is a lot there.
Metal Gear Solid. Pretty much the entire series has been trying to aim for that photorealism every single time they, have a subsequent title.
I mean, even the first Solid, it was first in the solid line,
Right.
Was considered photorealistic
For its time,
even
right.
though it was still very blocky.
It was very blocky.
They were going for as true to life as possible.
Right.
Versus a lot of other games where they weren't really trying for that, and maybe they held up a little bit better.
I'd say especially during that Metal Gear Solid era, I'd say the PS1 era is definitely where that photorealism definitely tried to lock in, because you got Tomb Raider.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there was Black, which I don't know if you guys actually played Black, which was like a military shooter type game, which
Wilson.
kind of like it was. What was that mercenary game that we played growing up?
Soldier of Fortune.
Soldier. It was kind of like that.
Oh my goodness.
Soldier of Fortune
takes
was
me back.
insane. But you would go through these set pieces, and it was kind of big bombastic, like, hey, shooting galleries,
Right.
Like, shoot these guys, and then this is going to blow up, and you got to move through here. And
I mean,
almost
even
like an
the
arcade game.
OG GoldenEye on the 64 was
Yeah.
trying to achieve photorealism.
Right. And it's just like, man, we've had these consoles that were not really known for, PS2 games. How many PS2 games do you know that were just like, yeah, that was a great photorealistic game? Like, I don't think of PS2 games and think photorealism, although you have some of the sports games, some of the, athletics games,
Yeah,
like
I would
ATV
say-
Off-Road Fury. Photorealistic.
Honestly, I think the PS3 is probably the PS3 360
Yes.
era is probably when they finally started to realize, okay, we can hit those high fidelity visuals now.
Yeah. And it looks photorealistic.
And it looks pretty good.
like, it looks like
Time.
real life.
My only issue with the PS3 Xbox era is you got photorealism, but you switched it out for the piss color era.
Yes.
Yes. Everything is gray.
Everything is gray and kind of yellow, and for some reason, it just feels like you're swimming in piss the entire time.
And even freaking Metal Gear Solid 4.
Was notorious for that.
What it looked, the whole thing was gray and brown
Yeah.
and yellow, some sepia.
Right,
It's like,
right.
what are we doing?
So, funny enough that you say that, because that itself is a stylization choice, and
it's true,
with
yeah.
these newer titles, they're trying to hit the more vibrant colors, and that itself is a
because we have
stylization.
HDR now.
Yeah, because we have HDR, and that itself is also a stylization choice.
Yeah.
Lots of blue and green. Lots of blue and green.
Well, I noticed when you boot up Sparking Zero from Dragon Ball.
Yes.
And it gives you the option: do you want to play this in HDR? Or do you want to play this in standard?
Right.
And technically,
SDR, right?
if you go into HDR, I don't know if my monitor is just not HDR enough. Like, it looks kind of jarring. Like,
It
it's
does.
so strong.
Right.
You're like, I should probably go back and just play this in standard DR, because this is kind of a lot. Yeah. It's kind of a lot.
Too
But,
sharp. Too sharp.
I guess
Too
my
sharp.
whole thing is that I think it's partially the reason why we constantly need this heavier hardware is because we're trying to constantly push these consoles to produce the most photorealistic stuff out there. When
Nintendo doesn't need it.
Nintendo doesn't need it, and for
And
the
the next
longest time,
console is going to be the weakest of the bunch.
it probably will be, and that's perfectly fine. As long as the games look good and play well. Now, look
Yes.
good doesn't mean you have to be photorealistic. It just means you have to have good art direction.
Right.
And I keep on trying to harp on that because I think art direction is king, always. It's the reason why some games still look good to this day, even if they happen to be photorealistic.
Now, if you could have only one I guess both of you guys could answer this, or maybe I'll answer it too. Great art direction or a great story and gameplay? Which one are you guys going to go for?
I got to go with story and gameplay. At the end of the day, my eyes can kind of adjust to if something looks weird. But if I'm going to be like, this looks like a masterpiece, but the story is a snooze fest and the gameplay is just either boring, I'm going to drop it. At the end of the day, most like games and most stories that you're going to want to, you're going to be like, what happens next? Right? Because we can always say, well, this looks ugly, this looks weird, this looks terrible. But at the end of the day, it's like, but that story though.
Right.
You know?
And I have a story when he gets done sharing.
Well, you know me. On one half, I do like being able to use my eyes to see things and see stuff that looks appealing. But at the end of the day, I do want to.
Oh, ladies, man, I see
Hey,
you.
listen. I'm just saying, like, look. Shout out to the blind community. I love you guys. And that's why I'm going to go with story and gameplay. Well, you thought I was going to say something controversial? Like, nah, we like nothing but good-looking things. The story, the gameplay, that can stand to the side.
Right.
Of course
No,
not.
it can't.
My whole thing here is I'm always about gameplay. I'm always about, trying to pursue those narrative, those interesting narratives, so to speak.
Right.
And that storytelling, funny enough, it doesn't have to just be words that are spoken. It can just be through the gameplay itself, or even through the art direction and through the environmental storytelling.
Right.
Because if you look at it, right? Because I have the Metal Gear Solid collection, right? I played classic Metal Gear Solid, the first one, right?
Right.
Everything looks like blocks. Nobody has faces, right?
Right.
They don't have
They
faces.
don't have faces, right? I have to. We have a PlayStation 1 and a PlayStation 2 over there. I'll have to boot it up and let you play it, right? And I look at this game and I say, man, these graphics, oh my gosh, they're hard. But at the same time, I'm playing this game and I'm like, man, what is Snake gonna do now? Man, he got knocked out. What's happening after this? What is going on at the end of the day? I love me a good story, bro.
It's funny that you say that because the original stories were word of mouth, and then they started putting stuff on the walls, cave drawings, all that stuff. Those are cool too. But something that I realized, and I have two little stories to share, so I hope you guys will suffer with me.
Bear with you.
Right? Will you suffer me this? Right? Dishonored 1 to Dishonored 2. Dishonored 1 has the better story. Dishonored 2 has way better graphics. Incredible gameplay features. So you can do all sorts of stuff that you could not do. We're talking about sliding and slashing
Right.
while slashing and jumping down and knocking people out instead of just killing people. Like all sorts of like quality of life features that you just wish they could just go remake the first game and just put all that in there so you can kind of choose a little bit more. Some additional options and different powers, and it's just the gameplay is amazing, but the story doesn't make me want to keep going back and playing it. You get stuck on a section and you're done with the game. You ever been in a game like that where you're just like, oh, I guess I didn't finish that? It's because the story wasn't gripping you at that moment and saying like, no, we got to work through this because the next part, whether it's a cutscene or environmental storytelling, is good. But so Dishonored 2 looks so much better. The art, the stylization, the visuals, all of it, it's amazing. But the story, right? And on the other side, we have, let's go back to the original Gears of War, which I played 7 years ago. Yeah. I got to it late. As much as it was kind of in that gray, piss color stuff era, the gameplay, I mean, it had a crazy art direction, just period.
Yeah.
Period.
Absolutely.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Wasn't trying to be photorealistic in that way, but it also was trying to push visuals in that of the time. But also the story, people talk about the story more than they talk about the Halo story until you start to get to like the entire like discography, not this, but the full catalog of Halo.
Right.
But then we have a different story, right? But and then also the gameplay was incredible. The mini game that to reload, which somebody might say that's an annoyance. I think it's fine. I think it's fun.
It's different.
You can cut somebody in half with your chainsaw gun. Like what? What? Like
cool.
it's probably too much for children. But I don't play that in front of my kids. Of all the games, not that one. But yeah, no, it was awesome. But if we talk about like the visuals, that's where the game kind of suffered in regards to like art, right?
Right.
Art direction. It was probably like if everything else was a 10, that was like an 8 or a 7. So I think you do need all three to make those masterpieces that will last. I do think, like what you said, we're kind of going into this goofy era of everything has to look stupid photorealistic. When I mean, let's talk about like Madden and like different sports games. Would you rather play a photorealistic sports game that's like super real life,
Bro, just give me another NBA Jam.
Yep.
bro, like let's go. Like I don't want to play NBA 2K. I want to play NBA Jam.
Give me a crazy looking, basketball game with a bunch of power ups.
Right.
Let me be able to
And just
to throw
like
a fireball.
make
in a
the
hoop.
screen explode. You know, I want my screen to explode every time something cool happens.
Oh, facts.
You know, like just make it fun. Anyways, we've been going on for a while. Anything else you need to add before we wrap up?
Honestly, at the end of the day, I think you guys should continue to enjoy the games you love. That being said, if you still think photorealistic games are king, you can go take your happy self over to the store and ask the person there, hey, do you guys have any Nintendo Switches? And they're going to say, yeah, we have some Switches. Nintendo Switches, that is. And then when they take it over to the Switch section, say, hey, you guys have any really cool, like interesting, like Nintendo titles? Like, yeah, we got some good ones. We have this small little indie title called Breath of the Wild. You want to try this out? And you're gonna be like, yeah, let me try that out. And you're gonna go home, pop it in your Switch. You're gonna play it, and you're like, huh, The Great Plateau. This is pretty cool looking. I like this. I want another Nintendo game. You're gonna go and you're gonna get the next Nintendo game. You're playing Animal Crossing, and so on and so on. And you know what's gonna matter at the end of the day? You're gonna remember all those experiences because you know why? Because the game was gripping. Not because the game was photorealistic. None of that. It's because the game had you captured. And that's what matters.
That's true. Shoot, Super Mario Wonder.
Mario Wonder is
Insane.
It makes me wonder. That's
Yeah, I wonder if I'm on something when I'm watching it. I'm just like, what did that just say? Are they singing now?
yeah. Why are the flowers talking to me? It's
Somehow, no talking characters in the entire series. The flowers talking.
yeah, the flowers finally talk to you.
That's
You're like,
insane.
wow.
That's insane. We got to end it here, guys. Guys, thanks so much for watching or listening wherever
Appreciate
you
y'all.
are. Peace.